What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? Welcome to the Six-Man Show Postgame Live presented by Rock'em. A special episode tonight. It's going to be a little bit of a hybrid show. We're going to do a little postgame live action. Jonathan Osborne's also going to join us in just a moment to recap what was an uneventful trade deadline for the Magic. We'll talk a lot about that. We'll get your thoughts on that in the chat. And so much more. So again, welcome to the show. My name's Kevin. Glad you're with us tonight. Magic lose in Denver, 112-90, in a game that actually wasn't even that close. Magic trailed by 30-something. I don't remember what the largest lead of the night for Denver was. 33. 33 was the largest lead of the night for Denver tonight. A game we knew would be tough. Playing in Denver is always tough. Playing in Denver on the second night of a back-to-back is always tough. Playing in Denver on the second night of a back-to-back at the end of a 5-game West road trip is very tough. However, you combine that with how today went when it comes to the trade deadline, and I think some people are a little bit upset, and potentially rightfully so. We'll talk all about that on the show. Welcome, my name's Kevin again. Glad you're with us. This is our live postgame show after every Orlando Magic game. It is brought to you by Rock'em. Rock'em is the world's largest sock store. They're amazing. They're super creative, come up with some amazing designs, not just for the Orlando Magic, for NFL, NHL, college teams as well, and even non-sports stuff. Nickelodeon, Disney, Harry Potter, Marvel, take your pick. They got all kinds of fun stuff at Rock'em.com. When you shop at Rock'em.com, use this code MAGIC20 because it'll get you 20% off your order all season long, and it helps out the Six-Man Show as well. Again, Rock'em is amazing. A ton of die-hard Magic fans over there, and we're super grateful for their support and super grateful for all of you who have bought stuff from Rock'em over the last couple seasons, and ask that you continue to do so and use that code MAGIC20. All right, guys. Wow, here we are. End of the road trip. A disaster. Could have been worse. Thank goodness for last night's win in Sacramento. However, tonight, not a great way to finish it, right? I said last night on the show, just wanted to be competitive. Tonight, I understood a loss. Again, all the factors that I just mentioned at the top of the show. Understandable loss. Denver, obviously a very good team, has a very good basketball player over there by the name of Nikola Jokic. But the Magic were just unable to be competitive tonight, I think for a lot of reasons. We're going to talk about those. First thing we are going to do, though, we are going to go check out this super chat that we have. This one's from Time Mr. TV. Says, time to break out the pitchforks and torches. Some people have done that. Some people have already done that on Twitter. I think maybe there have been some extreme responses, as there always will be to things. Thank you for that super chat, Ty. I think there are always going to be some extreme responses to certain things in life. We definitely got some extreme responses on social media today at the lack of a move at the deadline. Do I think it's time for pitchforks and torches? Maybe not quite. I think there's reason to be disappointed today, upset, slightly angry, but I'm not outraged. Okay, we're gonna have Jonathan Osborne, like I said, join us in just a moment. He may have a stronger opinion on this, but again, we're going to have a whole segment dedicated to the trade deadline that came and went today, and so definitely stick around for that, and obviously get your thoughts in the chat as we'll hit that as well. As for tonight, as for this game, that's what we're going to talk about first, against the Nuggets. Yeah, pretty much a mess all night long. The first thing you look at here is the offense. This team just struggled mightily. You have 3 players in double figures. Shout out Wendell Carter Jr. Him and Goga, really the only 2 guys efficient on the night. Wendell ends up with 19 points, 4 boards. The other 2 guys in double figures, Paolo and Franz, as you'd expect. Unfortunately, though, not an efficient night for either of them. 18 for Paolo on 6 of 14 shooting. 14 for Franz on 6 of 17 shooting. The team as a whole, 31 of 84. For 36.9% from the field and 5 of 31 for 16.1% from 3. That is wild. Very, very difficult to win basketball games when you're shooting those kinds of numbers. On the other hand, the Nuggets, they have that guy, Nikola Jokic, 28 points, 10 boards, 12 assists. A pretty little triple-double for that triple-double machine. And, of course, Michael Porter Jr. absolutely torches you for 30 on 11 of 16 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3. So, yeah, always going to be tough to overcome that kind of discrepancy, offensively speaking, between the two teams. This is another game, if you ask me, similar to the game last Saturday against Utah. I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I can usually walk away from just about any game with some sort of silver lining. I don't know. I don't have one for tonight, right? And again, for me, this game is a little bit different than those earlier games on this trip because I think it is a legitimate excuse. Second night of a back-to-back in Denver, end of a road trip, all those things, very legitimate excuses. To lose a game, again, I just wish it was more competitive. Not even competitive for 4 quarters. Make it competitive for 3. Run out of gas in the fourth quarter and let them destroy you, as they do so often at home in the fourth quarter. But to be out of the game so early, it's pretty disappointing. But let's go to the chat and see what you guys think. Again, we're going to talk first about the Nuggets game. Then we'll open up the can of worms that is the trade deadline once we see Jonathan Osborne join us here in just a little bit. Excuse me. First, we have Swordfish. Says, most games under 100 points with the worst 3-point rating. Yeah, this is now, I think, game number 22 of the season. Maybe 23. I can't remember that we've been held under 100 points. Pretty wild. Matthew Thomas says, can someone give me one reason anyone should feel optimistic about this team? Powell and Franz. I know they're struggling right now, but to me, that's still 2 amazing cornerstones for this team. But unfortunately, the team is definitely struggling right now. I don't think it's indictment of Powell and Franz in the long term. I'm still 100% in on those guys, but they are definitely struggling, and then therefore the entire team certainly is. Lots of heated and strong opinions in the chat, some of which I definitely can't share publicly here. Let's see. Time Measure TV says, starting to think they lean so hard on defense because they can't coach offense. I mean, obviously, offense is definitely a struggle of this team. That's Captain Obvious statement. I think the defensive emphasis from this coaching staff is still warranted. I definitely think so. Chris D says, ball movement in the second half is non-existent. Powell and Franz chug, throw up a mid-range jumper. It's on Mosley to see that happening and get them into another set or action. Yeah, we've talked about that before. When this Magic team is struggling, how can Mosley, get them in better positions to succeed? Is that on Mosley? Is it on the rest of the assistants to do that? Do we need to hire another assistant that's more offensive oriented? Maybe, possibly, probably. Who knows? I'm going to get a couple more thoughts on this Denver game, and then Jonathan's going to join us here, and we're going to talk a little more about the Denver game, and then obviously the trade deadline. I think a lot of you are here to discuss the trade deadline. Let's see a couple more of these. House says, I'm a homer. I know I'm biased, but I'm so tired of watching our momentum just get drained when they call ticky-tack fouls on us and let our guys get beat up. Yeah, honestly, the tone was set very early. Magic with like 4 or 5 fouls in the first like 3 or 4 minutes immediately takes out any kind of intensity that this Magic defense can put forth when the refs just initially, right from the get-go, want to be super sensitive and ticky-tack on just about every single call. All right, I'm going to bring in Jonathan here, and we're going to talk maybe a little bit more about this Nuggets game and also about the trade deadline. Jonathan, welcome. Glad to have you. How are things going, bro? Oh, I can't wait. Is it me that makes me not hear you? Hold on. I don't hear you, Jonathan. I don't know if that's me or if that's you. No, I don't think it's me. Let's see. I'm going to, yeah, I don't hear you, bro. Not sure why. It looks like I should hear you, but I don't. So I'm gonna do this. I don't know if you want to leave and rejoin, and we'll try that again. Okay, a couple more thoughts here from the chat while we get Jonathan's audio sorted out. Michael Kiefer says it's time to start panicking. I think there's some merit to that. Let's try this again. Jonathan, can we hear you? Oh, no. What in the world? Why is this not working? Let's see here. We're going to do this on the fly here. I don't see any reason why we can't hear you. This is the beauty of live broadcast, folks. Let's see. We got to get this sorted out. We got to get Jonathan Osborne. I don't have you, brother. Let's see. This is the beauty of doing things live. Yeah, I'm not seeing. Good grief. This is could be a problem. We might be recording a separate episode then. Let's see. Is there anything you can see on your end, Jonathan? You
Can you
can
hear me
mess with.
now?
Oh, yes, I hear you now.
Through the AirPods, I think.
It is through the AirPods. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yes, it
I
is.
will just have to rock with the AirPods.
All right, that's what we'll do. We'll roll it. Okay, well, add that to the list of struggles for the day, Jonathan. And what's up, bro? How's it going?
No, what's going on? Things are just going swimmingly. What are we seem to be talking about here?
Well, we're talking about the Orlando Magic first losing by 22 tonight to the Denver Nuggets. So I figure we can talk about that for just a couple more minutes. Not a whole lot to take away from this game, but then obviously I think we do need to open the can of worms that is the trade deadline or
Yeah.
the lack of action today from the Magic for the trade deadline. We'll go through a few more messages from the chat. I think we did just get a super chat. This one's from Gabe Gain says, he says, I just hope both teams had fun. Smiley face. Gabe, that's so kind of you. I hope. I know the Denver Nuggets had fun. I'm not so sure about the Orlando Magic, but wow, you're so kind. Appreciate that. Matthew says, bring the red background back. I've decided the red background is going to come back when we're on like some sort of serious losing streak. All right, that's a different level of dark Kevin that gets unlocked. So we won't see that today. But hey, we'll see how long it lasts till we get that. Turquoise says, nothing to see here. Yeah, this is one to forget for sure. Couple of thoughts here, maybe about the trade deadline that I'm seeing in the chat. George says, weak. Other teams in similar spots aggressively try to supplement their young talent while the Magic stay stagnant and get passed by yet again. Tons of redundant assets, no meaningful moves. Jonathan, I don't know if we want to jump straight into trade deadline talk because, like I said, there's not a whole lot to discuss from this Nuggets game. Magic got absolutely destroyed, trailed by as many as 33. You have three guys in double figures. You shoot 36% from the field, 16% from three. Like, there's no silver lining to pull from this game. You got absolutely blown out. What I was saying at the top of the show while you were recording your post-game hit was I do feel that of the games on this road trip, this has the most excuses, right? You're at the end of a road trip, end of a 5-game road trip, second night of a back-to-back in Denver with the altitude against a very good team. I understand why you lose this game. I expected to lose this game. I just hoped it was a little bit more competitive than this.
Yeah, I would say I'm not. It's not the result of this loss that I'm really upset or bothered by. It's really easy to get upset about this loss coming off of the trade deadline that we
Right.
had today. But for me, it's just yet another mark in the list of reasons that we have for why people are upset about the lack of action today. Obviously, anybody who saw my posts right at the deadline, I was very upset and emotional today. And I think that is mostly just maybe for me, but maybe other people can speak to this as well. It just speaks to the level of frustration and what has been in an entire season. Maybe that is not entirely fair to the decision makers and the people that are responsible for getting deals done. But when you look around the league and you see other teams improving, you see division rivals improving, you see a team like the San Antonio Spurs who have a very young star who's very early on in his career. They go out and get an all-star guard and De'Aaron Fox put next to Victor Wembanyama. You see the Cleveland Cavaliers who are setting the league aflame, and yet they go out and make a big deal for a guy like DeAndre Hunter, a deal in which it doesn't feel like they gave up a ton to get a guy like that who's averaging 19 points, averaging almost 40% from three on almost 7 attempts per game. Yes, people point to, well, look at the people that the Magic were rumored to target, like a Kobe White or an Anthony Simons or a Colin Sexton and so on and so forth. One, I would say that really none of those, other than Kobe White, we were really rumored to be going after. There were Ian Begley reported earlier today that the Magic and the Bulls were in talks around, a trade for Kobe White. Um, but when you look at that, or like a Cam Johnson, for example, maybe the Magic were interested there. A deal didn't get done, but when there's just such a glaring hole on this team in terms of the offense, in terms of the shooting, I think it's entirely reasonable for people to be upset and frustrated as to why are other teams able to make these moves and we're not, and nothing crazy. Like, I don't think we were asking for a LaMelo Ball trade or a Trae Young trade or anything like that, but a trade around the margins to reasonably improve the offense on this roster. And I think at the end of the year, short of us winning a championship, which I think we would all agree at this point is incredibly unlikely, short of winning a championship, I think you'll be able to look at this team and say, what could they have achieved with some more offense? And I think that is where most people's frustration is coming from today.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair, and I think it comes from a place of not just be. We've talked about this before, Jonathan. Not because of the struggles this team has had over the last month, but because the struggles that this team has had over the last month are the same struggles that the team has had over at least the last 2 seasons, really longer than that, honestly. And so it's not like this is a new problem that is just coming from a team that's struggling. It's a problem that has been around, and like we talked about in the last episode of the Six Man Show, that the Magic have won in spite of those struggles. And unfortunately, of late, those weaknesses, those flaws have really reared their ugly heads to the tune of this stretch of losing that the Magic have been on, obviously over the last 3+ weeks or so. And so I think that's obviously where the frustration comes. I think the real boiling point, I think, for many Magic fans is less actually about this season. I think it's more so about, kind of like you alluded to, sending the message to Powell and Franz that we want to surround you with things that will make you better and make us better and lead us to a better chance of success. I think that is where a lot of Magic fans really struggle with today. And maybe that's just me personally. Like, I'm not sitting here outraged over the lack of moves today. Would I have liked to see a move? Yes. But for me, again, a move today would have been less about this season, which I'm still of the notion that we are 3, 4, 5 years away from true contention. I know not a lot of Magic fans want to hear that, but just statistically, the primes for NBA players are 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, that whole range, and our best players are 23 and 22, right? So mathematically speaking, we are still a handful of years away from being a true contender, right? The reason why I think personally today it was a struggle for me is because, like I said, I want to send messages to Powell and Franz that say, hey, what we have around you right now, we know it's not good enough. We know it's not good enough. And while I don't think they were going to make a move today that was going to catapult them to be favorites to win it all this season, like you said, but I think it could have given a better opportunity for us to succeed this year. But ultimately, it's about sending a message to our core guys, to our cornerstones that, hey, we want to surround you with the best players that we think can help us and help you succeed. Because, and the last thing I'll say about this, I know this fan base has been burned multiple times by our superstars leaving. They all left for very different reasons, very different circumstances, but I think we are all terrified, petrified that it's just going to take one wrong move here, one lack of a move here, one comment here, one whatever, that ultimately we're going to lose one or both of these guys. And I know I'm saying things that are way, way down the road, but I think that's part of why this fan base is a little bit on edge today, because I think some of that almost like PTSD of past guys leaving is flaring up in a pretty interesting way. Does any of that seem fair to you?
I think it seems 100% fair, especially when you look at the climate on social media over the course of the last week, not even so much surrounding the trade deadline, but surrounding Paolo and the way that he's been playing and some of the criticism that people have expressed and people coming to Paolo's defense and coming to Franz's defense in certain instances because of the fact that we don't want, like, it might seem silly that if these guys see even 100 or 200 tweets on social media, people saying, get rid of this guy, trade this guy, do whatever, that could really alter their opinion of what is literally millions of Magic fans, right? Um, but we do have that level of PTSD where we don't want it to come to that point. So we want to have every opportunity to stop something like that from happening. So I think there is a lot to that. Um, and yeah, again, the moves were not necessarily for this season, but when we talk about the goals that this team had for this season, now you're 25 and 27. Actually, let me refresh my standings here. Yeah, you're 25 and 28 now, and you are 5 games back of Indiana for home court, what was the number one goal that, to a man, almost every person, not only on the roster, but in the organization, talked about on Media Day being the goal this year? Home court advantage. I am not only when it comes to basketball, but in life, not ever of the mindset or the way of thinking that your circumstances have to always make you adjust your goals, right? I think it's easy to point to the injuries and say, "Oh, well, look, that's why we weren't able to do this." And don't get me wrong, that is not complete. That's not even nearly totally unfounded.
Right.
There's a lot of truth there, but I do still think that you are 5 games out, but you're only 5 games out. Not making a move, 5 games to me feels like 10 games. Had we made a move today, 5 games may feel like 5 games, or 5 games may feel like 3 games, or whatever. I think you understand, the point that I'm trying to make there.
Yeah.
But this feels like punting on this season and punting on the expectations that we've had at the beginning of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's go to the chat. They have a lot of thoughts about the trade deadline, as you can imagine. And I definitely want to get some of these up here and see. I just lost my place. Let's see. Let's find where we were.
I'm gonna
Go
walk
ahead.
away for just a second, Kev. I've been really sick
Yeah.
the last couple of days. I just need to get some water. I can still hear everything you're saying.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll do this really fast, and I'll let you back in when you come back. So let's see. A couple things here. Hal says others might complain about the lack of a trade. Our players, I think it's more of on our offensive scheming. But if I was a player and I stood still with my hands straight up and had a foul called me, yeah, talking more about the foul calls tonight. Pretty tough stretch there for the team when it comes to fouls. I'm trying to find where I was just a moment ago. When it comes to, here we go. Okay, now I found some of the messages regarding trade deadline stuff. All right, this one's from C. Thomas. Says, I don't want to fire Weltman. We have drafted very well and managed the team very well under his leadership. Don't care what anyone says. Tristan da Silva was a hit. That's, I think, part of the reason why some Magic fans are pretty upset today, because they felt that we have trusted, all of us have trusted Jeff Weltman back in the day, John Hammond, and now Anthony Parker. This whole Jeff Weltman era, we've trusted these guys, and they haven't really, truly let us down yet. Sure, there have been a couple missed draft picks. Sure, there have been a couple moments where it feels like we could have maybe made a deal. To me, this was the day where some of those assets that we've collected over the years could potentially be like cashed in, right? So I think I'm definitely with you. Let me bring this message back up. I'm definitely with you. I don't want to fire Jeff Weltman. I think he has done a lot of good things, obviously. However, to me, this was we've stockpiled some of these assets. I thought today was a day to cash some of them in, not all of them, but like you said, Jonathan, some of them in. And so I agree. I'm not ready to fire him, but I think it is obviously disappointing for a lot of people.
Completely ridiculous to float the idea of like firing Jeff Weltman, or like some people are comparing him to Rob Hennigan. Some people are even comparing him to Nico Harrison. All of those are completely ridiculous. We have said a million times on this show the fantastic job, for the most part, that Jeff Weltman, John Hammond, and Pete D'Alessandro and Anthony Parker have all made, running this front office. All that to say, they're not perfect. Everyone is going to have missteps, and we could go through the list of, not super significant, but also it's not necessarily a very short list. I think we could go through over the course of the last, 8 years, and probably find 8 to 10 things that we probably could have done differently. How many, second round picks have we punted on where you see guys get drafted after those picks and those guys have become, real NBA players, and so on and so forth. Like you mentioned, other guys that we drafted that, definitely did not work, like Mo Bamba, other guys who the jury is still kind of out on at this point. And yeah, I think, like you were saying, they have built up like a lot of goodwill and a lot of patience. And I think Magic fans have been incredibly patient. Do I think that the team has rewarded us for that patience? I do think they have. But at some point, like you can only expect fans to be so patient and building around these guys. And basically since the day that Paolo Banchero and other people have made this point, not me, right? Like sometimes I can't see the forest for the trees, but other people have made the point like the day that you drafted Paolo Banchero, we all kind of knew what you were going to have to put around this guy and what you need to put around frauds and able to like in order to optimize those guys and allow them to play to their strengths. And to this point, maybe it's not for the lack of trying. You went out and got Contavious Caldwell Pope this year. You drafted, Tristan Da Silva, but here we are. This team is now shooting 30% on the year, which is going to be the worst mark of any team in the past 10 years. And you can have a good process, yes. And I do think the Magic have good process, but ultimately it's the results that matter. And the results that we have this year is that this team still cannot shoot. And the fact that we didn't do anything today to really address that. I'm sure there were attempts to address that today, but the fact that ultimately you did not get anything done to address that today, I I do think that deserves criticism.
Yep, I 100% agree. Let's go through some of these messages here from the chat. This one's from El Mahiko. Says, y'all assume that just because the money matches, the other team will want to go with it. We just didn't have what the other teams wanted or needed for what they would give up. That's always part of it, right? It takes two to tango when it comes to trades. Nice Jet Howard cut, by the way. Love that. That's classic.
Oh,
Look at that. But yeah,
oh wait till you see this one.
you got another one? Oh, Vooch. Oh, rip. Yeah, it takes two to tango. Again, where it feels a little bit tense for me is the Magic did have assets. You look around the league, look at some of the deals that got done. And I think that's also part of the frustration. You alluded to it, Jonathan, that we were one of 4 teams in the entire league that did not make a move before the deadline. 4. That means 26 NBA teams thought, you know what? We need to make a deal. Obviously, each one was for a lot of different reasons. Some it was to make them better for this year. Some it was to stash away some more capital for future years. Some it was salary moves. Obviously, there's a lot of different reasons. But the fact that we were one of 4, I think, is what adds salt to the wounds, especially, like you said, when you look at the Eastern Conference and the teams around us that all made moves. Think about the teams that we're competing with just for playoff positioning. Miami made a move. We knew they were going to. We knew they were going to ship away Jimmy Butler. But they not only is it addition by subtraction, they got a pretty good guy back as well to potentially make them better this season, right? Detroit made a couple moves. They now are getting Dennis Schroeder in what was the Jimmy Butler deal, which is kind of weird. But Detroit is now adding him, and the Hawks made moves. Now their moves were a little bit different, right? They're offloading a guy like DeAndre Hunter, but through the list, I mean, Chicago made moves. Now their moves potentially are going to make them worse than better. Philadelphia made moves, right? Again, up and down their Milwaukee. We didn't even mention Milwaukee. They get Kyle Kuzma, which I think could end up biting them in the butt. I hope it does at least. But at least they made a move, right? And so all of that to say, I think all of that is what has combined to maybe the tension that we feel today. Like Duvall said, the Cavs, Heat, Pistons all made moves, and Weltman refused to do nothing. Yeah, I think that's part of why it's a little bit of a struggle. Luke Benson says the best team in the NBA still decided they needed a big trade. Yeah, talking about the Cavs made that deal like we just talked about, which I think is very interesting. We talk about a lot about chemistry with the Magic and how sometimes we don't want to ruffle any of those feathers because we think it's a strength of this team. I think that's a big strength for the Cavs. Did they trade away a couple guys that maybe haven't been super critical to their success this season? Yes, but were they critical to the chemistry of the team? Maybe. I don't know. Does adding a new guy come in and rock the boat a little bit? I don't know, but they at least weren't afraid to make a deal, which could end up helping them or hurting them in the end, which I think is interesting. Go ahead.
To the point of it takes 2 to tango. Like the Atlanta Hawks, Jalen Johnson went down. Now they've lost 9 out of their last 10 and seem to be free falling. And then moving on from Bogdanovich, moving on from DeAndre Hunter. Now there's rumors that Trae Young may be disgruntled. They seem like they're tanking, and they don't even own their own pick this
Right.
year. So it just kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense of what they're doing. And when you see DeAndre Hunter, and again, I'm not like, oh, we should have been all in on DeAndre Hunter, but like you see a move like that get made. I think it was 3 second-round picks, 2 first-round swaps, and Karis LeVert and George Niang. Like George Niang maybe is going to be waived or bought out, and then Karis LeVert is an expiring contract. Atlanta Hawks are not making moves that would lead me to believe that they're trying to be competitive this year. I don't know why you would swap DeAndre Hunter and for Karis LeVert and George Niang
Right.
and picks if you were trying to make your team better this year. So I mean, just in a vacuum, could the Magic offer the Hawks a better deal and get a guy who is kind of like a prototypical Jeff Weltman guy? I think he's like 6'7", somewhere around there. Long, solid defender. Again, shooting 40% on almost seven attempts like a game. Like a guy that really could have helped. And for the people saying, "Oh, we wouldn't want DeAndre Hunter," well, it's like, okay, well, a lot of us really wanted Cam Johnson, and maybe DeAndre Hunter isn't quite the offensive guy that Cam Johnson is, but like would have helped the defense, would have gotten us a little bit better on that end, would have helped the shooting. So I hope people aren't just like dismissing if we would have got a guy like DeAndre Hunter. I think we all would have been pretty excited if that would have been the move that we had that was made today. So again, yeah, I reacted emotionally earlier today. I 100% own up to that. But seeing this team get blown out the way that they did tonight and the fashion in which they did doesn't really change the way that I feel about the lack of moves at the deadline today, unfortunately. Obviously, we want to hear more from people in the chat, but definitely want to talk about just sort of like what is next for this Magic team, like the rest of the way here and heading into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of these messages really fast. Like up the stream, y'all, Kevin says. Yeah, I would definitely appreciate that as Jonathan and I are hopping on here at just about midnight Eastern time. If you appreciate the content, whether it's after a great win like last night or after a blowout like today and maybe a disappointing trade deadline, we always appreciate you guys hitting the like and even sharing the stream to your fellow Magic fans. Yeah, yeah, Mr. J's, MJ Ridiculous, if I can read, says, is there a world or scenario that being eliminated in the play-in happens because of two bad shooting performances? Oh, 100%. I think that is absolutely in the cards. The good news is, if there is a silver lining right now, we've talked about this, and this kind of leads into what you're talking about, Jonathan. In spite of all of this, the Magic are still 2 games out of being clear of the play-in, right? 2 games away from being the 6th seed. Still very much within reach, and we are now in the stretch of the schedule that is this is the most favorable stretch, long stretch in the schedule of the entire season, okay? You're about to go home. You're about to be home, I think it's for 10 of the next 11 games. Because of the schedule changes that happened last week, I believe it is now 10 out of the next 11 games are at home. And a lot of those games are very winnable. So if you're asking me, first and foremost, I don't think the sky is falling, okay? I think we have a problem with this team that should have been addressed today. I don't think the sky is falling. The only reason being, I think the Magic can still make moves. And I don't mean that's a bad phrase to use on a day like today. I think the Magic can still move up in the standings with the guys they have. I think they're capable of it. And obviously that's the goal, is to avoid the play-in. But you're exactly right. If this team is still locked in the play-in come April, it is 100% within reason to fear the Magic having 2 bad shooting performances and being Dunskies. Jonathan, when you look at the schedule that's ahead in this short term, from now to March 6th, do you feel like the Magic can make a run to get back up into the playoff section, or how do you feel about this coming next few weeks?
Well, if the last, month is any indication, it genuinely feels like at this point in the season, our only hope is getting Jalen Suggs back and Jalen being healthy and being that spark for this team. He's been questionable heading into the last couple of games. Hopefully, you're able to get him home. And like you mentioned, 9 out of your next 10, excuse me, look as if they're at home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so sorry, 10 out of your next 11 are at home. I think you realistically have to go 7-4, 8-3, over that stretch. If you're going to get yourself back into the zone of like legitimately being a threat for home court advantage. If you go 6-6 or 6-5 or 5-6 or something like that in that stretch, then we're legitimately looking at the play-in because this is really your last most winnable stretch of the season. And then we get right back into playing like pretty tough, difficult teams the rest of the way here.
Yeah, that's part of this whole stretch here. Like this is the stretch to get your mojo back.
This
If
is
you
the season.
This is, yeah, 100%. These next 11 games, this will make or break the rest of the season, and could potentially have long-term effects going forward into future seasons. Honestly, that sounds dramatic, but it could. It could, right? And so it's super important for the Magic to find their mojo and get on a hot streak again. Just number one for this season to move up in the standings and avoid the play-in, but again, potentially setting the tone for the rest of the season. If the Magic between now and March 6th, which is literally a month from now, if the Magic are unable to make a run during this home stretch, we are going to have some serious conversations, and this team is going to be in serious trouble. Like that's just bottom line. I'm a positive guy. I will be doom and gloom if the Magic do not go on a very decent winning run here over these next 11 games. When you look at the stretch, it's San Antonio, Atlanta, Charlotte, all those at home. The only road game during the stretch is at Atlanta right after the All-Star break. Then it's Memphis, Washington, Cleveland, Golden State, Toronto, and Chicago. All of those at home. Are there tough games in there? Yes. Memphis, very good. Cleveland, obviously, very good. Golden State, you just lost to them, and they're going to have a new look with Jimmy Butler. All those are difficult games, but they're all at home. And then outside of that, Atlanta, we just talked about them. You play them twice in that stretch, they are likely going to be throwing away the rest of their season, if today's moves are any indication. Toronto, they made some moves to potentially get better. Are they going to be better? I don't know. Chicago, they dealt Zach LaVine. You should beat Chicago. Again, go down the list. It's a lot of winnable games that the Magic have to win in order to kind of redeem this season here. We just got a super chat coming in from Nick Monks. Says KCP 2 for 6 and laughing it up when we're down 20. Nice. Yeah, it's a tough look.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of guys laughing in games recently where you're down 15, 20 points.
Yep.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not really the guys I think that we care about long term, but there have been, at least two or three guys over the course of the last few games where we're down 20 and they're laughing and having a happy old time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why what bothers at least me. It's like this team is almost not comfortable, but they're used to these blowouts right now. Like this, it's just been one after the other.
You and I talked, back like after Franz went down and we were still competitive and winning some of those games, but we kept saying the issue is that you keep getting down big in these games and then you're coming back. And if those bad habits carry over into Powell and Franz when they come back, this team is going to be in trouble. And I think we are seeing some of the effects of that. I also wanted to mention that Jason Beatty put out an article, basically like a one-on-one with Jeff Weltman today, and I thought some of the most interesting things that he said was, with the team struggling recently, teams were trying to put a little bit of pressure and kind of squeeze the Magic. I'm paraphrasing here, and talked about how the team didn't want to make a panic move. Well, at this point, Kevin, again, we're talking about the next 11 games kind of being the season. Let's say, and again, I don't want to get totally doom and gloom here, but I also want to be realistic, just the way that this team has looked for essentially the last month. If this continues, right, and you're winning, 3 out of 15 games the rest of the way here, and you end up either in the play-in or you get swept in the first round or something like that. Going into the offseason, how do you think teams are going to view the Magic? They are going to view the Magic as desperate, and then at that point, you're making a big panic move. Like if you're going to try to if the goal today, 3 o'clock hits, you don't get anything done, and Jeff Weltman and the front office are all talking amongst themselves and say, okay, we didn't get anything done today. We need to get something done in the offseason, right? You can keep saying be patient, right? And if there's we always say like sometimes like the worst move, or like making a bad move is or not making a move is better than making a bad move. But how long can we just continue to kick the can down the road? Like if we get to the offseason and teams are trying to squeeze us and we say, oh, well, you know what? We just didn't want to overpay. We didn't want to feel over leveraged. So we're going to wait until the trade deadline. Oh, well, nothing really, manifested itself there either. So now we're going into the next offseason. And now it's like 3 or 4 straight years of first round exits. I'm trying to understand the logic and point out, in my opinion, the flaw in that logic. Where I would much rather make maybe a small panicky move now that you have to overpay a little bit. Like if we ended up giving up both first round picks this year for Kobe White. Some people may say that was an overpay, maybe it's not Kobe White. Whoever the front office deemed, you know, the type of guy that we need to push this team along, you go out and you overpay for that guy. If it's a Cam Johnson, you give up both this year's, first round picks and like a pick swap down the road, and I don't know, Jet Howard, whatever they wanted, right? Even if we would have been like, hey, a little bit of an overpay, but I can see the logic to where now you're the fifth seed or the sixth seed, you're competitive in the first round, or you make the second round, and now we can go to teams and like, hey, we just made another competitive first round series, or we made the second round, and teams aren't really trying to squeeze us. It's just like, if the rest of this season doesn't go well, I think you could just be putting yourself up for having to make a panic move in the offseason. And if you don't, like, I just don't see this situation like really improving unless all of these guys just become league average, like 3-point shooters overnight.
Yeah. Jose says, hoping for Jalen to be back on Saturday, 10 of the next 11 at home. Most are winnable. If it doesn't turn around, then we may have to pack it up. 100% agree. That's exactly kind of what we were just talking about. And I think the other part of this is obviously without Jalen at this point, that's really, well, tonight we were missing Gary as well. But Jalen's the only guy that's been missing in this stretch. And like you mentioned, like, if not having Jalen is the reason we're playing like this, then there's a bigger problem with this entire roster, like the entire makeup of this team. If they rely on one guy to bring intensity and stuff, that's not going to be good enough. Sir Sundown says, agree 100%, Kevin. We have to show Powell and Franz that we're serious about winning a championship. Yeah, I think you got to start making moves.
Really quick,
yeah,
to your point, Kevin, right now, that is the best case scenario, it seems like, that this team is just missing Jalen Suggs.
Right.
So if your best case scenario seems to be we just need this one guy who is our third best player, if we just need our third best player for everything else to work and for everyone else to look like NBA players, you've got a lot of issues on your roster. And that adds to the issue with not making moves today.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Joe says, is Suggs ever going to play? It felt like he was coming back almost day to day. Like I thought he was going to come back Monday against Golden State. He didn't. I thought he was going to come back for one of these two games on this back-to-back. I knew he wouldn't play both games, but I thought he would play for one of them. And the fact that he didn't is a little bit of a bummer. I'd like to think that we'll see him Saturday, right? But I thought we'd see him 4 days ago. So I really don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, Joe, but yeah, it's a tough one. We did just get another super chat from Nick Monk. Says Mo's energy and passion is missed heavily. That is true, and his talent. Like let's also not disregard that. Like more often than not, a very consistent scorer off the bench. But as you said, also brought energy and passion, and is definitely sorely missed. And to have him go down, go ahead.
And if we were getting Mo back at some point this season, then I could more understand not making a move, but he's not coming back.
Right. Yeah, and that's again part of the cloud that's hanging over this season. C. Thomas says, to be honest, there is no reason to be negative. It's been a rough month. We can easily climb right back where we were. Schedule off today is now much easier on the Magic. Everyone settle down. I think there's a line. I think there's a line here, right? Like I said at the top of the show, I feel like there have been some people that have overreacted way too far. Like we talked about, I am absolutely nowhere near a fire Jeff Weltman crowd. I know there's a lot of them. I'm seeing a lot of them in the chat. I feel like that is too far of a reach for today. The other end of the spectrum, which is where C. Thomas is, there's no reason to be negative. It's been a rough month. that feels a little bit of a stretch to me too. I do feel like there's some justification in being negative simply because, like I said, this is not a new problem that the Magic all of a sudden can't score the basketball. It's been a problem for years, and right now, everything else isn't quite clicking as well as it has. Like the things that we've been able to do to overcome the offensive woes. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of justification to be a little bit negative. Let's see what else we got here. Joe says the team is going to give up on this coach. I think that's a very real fear. We see it far too often in sports. A team starts to go on a bit of a tough stretch, and the coach can lose the locker room. It doesn't feel like that has happened yet, but I know that is potentially in the back of a lot of Magic fans' minds. Go ahead. Do you want to say something, Jonathan?
Yeah, just to the point of like, oh, there's no reason to be negative. You're a Franz Wagner 25-point fourth quarter against Detroit, and your best shooting performance of the season away from losing your last 12 games in a row.
Yeah, that's a
Again,
great point.
some people are going way too far with it, but I think people are very justified in feeling negative and frustrated about the lack of action at the deadline.
Yeah. Jose says injuries have definitely hurt the opportunity to evaluate the team. We all know that. However, the deficiencies predate Franz, Paolo, and Jalen. The front office can't keep kicking the can down the road. Yeah, I mean, a lot of struggles for this team for sure. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, again, a lot of this stuff is some pretty fired up stuff, which is fine. I definitely understand that. Let's see. Brandon says the only good thing Weltman has done is Paolo and Franz. That's it. That feels like a stretch to me. First off, even if let's say that was it, those are pretty good its, right?
It's
Like,
still
I
pretty
mean,
good.
I don't think that is what's it, but Paolo, we just talked about this. Paolo, not expected to be the number one overall pick, like regarded by many to be the second or third best player in that draft. Jeff Weltman hits a home run with Paolo. I take Paolo 99 times out of 100 from that draft, right? Franz never, ever expected to go at 8. It was a guy the Magic and Jeff Weltman had circled from the get-go, from the times that they interacted with him. And so even if that is the best thing he's done, those are two really good things. But I feel like he's done a lot of other good things over the course of his time here. Some people say Jalen Suggs fell to them. Is that true? Yeah. They still could have botched it, right? They still could have picked somebody else and messed it up. And I think ultimately we're pretty happy with Jalen Suggs. Have there been some missteps? Sure. Like the jury is still out on the draft from 2 seasons ago, Anthony Black and Jet Howard, right? Is it too early to totally say that was a mistake of a draft? I think it's too early. But are there still questions about that? Sure. You look at an addition like KCP. On paper, it was a perfect signing for the Magic. It gives you defense. It gives you three-point shooting. Has that worked out so far? No. Is that Jeff Weltman's fault? I don't think so, right? On paper, KCP was a perfect addition to upgrade the shooting guard position from a Gary Harris. Is that their fault? I don't think so. I don't know. Couple super chats just came in super fast. Gabe Gaines says, I just don't understand the idea of keeping some of the dead weights on this team at the deadline. Let's talk about this before we get to, there's another super chat I want to get to. I think this is probably the rub for me. Like the big, like we have several guys that is it disrespectful to call them dead weights? Maybe, but that's what it feels like, right? There are several guys on this roster that I do not feel can contribute to a winning basketball team. And that is why, if any deal was going to be made today, I thought it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be offloading 2 or 3 guys that I don't feel contribute to this team's success and upgrading one position, right? Like a 2-for-1 type thing or something like that. I think that for me is maybe the biggest point of frustration. Is that any part of your frustration, Jonathan, about offloading some of that dead weight?
Well, yeah, like for example, like Gary Harris has a player op or a team option, excuse me, for next year for like $7 million. The team is going to be, I think like $3.5 million as everything is right now without anything changing, like $3.5 million into the first apron. In order to get underneath the first apron, you don't pick up Gary Harris's option and you go out and you sign a guy to like a veteran contract, like you did like a Corey Joseph. Um, People have talked about the Wendell extension. Wendell was great tonight. Wendell was our best player in
Yeah.
this game, but you signing him to the extension last summer meant you are not able to deal him until I think like April
April.
26th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which, I mean, at that point, like you're into the postseason, and then you're, obviously heading into next year's, transaction window. But like a lot of people have said, like, hey, maybe this in the moment, the Wendell extension, like it was like, okay, like, if it's a team friendly deal, but then it was like, wait a minute, did we really have to do this now? Has he earned this extension? Is he playing up to that extension this season? I would argue no. I think he has been better recently, but I still don't think he's playing to the level that we all expected him to play at this year. Um, so yeah, I do. There are, are a couple of things that you can point to within the past, 18 months. We talk about the Andy Black and Jet Howard trades. Are those guys going to work out long term? I don't know. But if you draft other guys, are those assets more valuable and they help you get a deal done at this cycle? Who really knows? Like, these are the things that I'm saying that it's ridiculous to consider firing Jeff Weltman or anything like that. But I do think it's fair to say, like, okay, well, these are the areas in which, maybe he's misstepped in. And I do understand where people's apprehension comes from in terms of like, okay, well, when are we going to make the move? And is that move going to be the right move? And at this point, we just kind of have to wait and let that play out. Nothing is going to change in between now and then. They're not going anywhere, this front office. But yeah, to your point, I think it would have made a lot of sense to consolidate, even if to just upgrade a little bit. Like a guy like Gary Harris, could you get a guy who is a little bit more durable that does a lot of the same things? Maybe, but here we are, and the Magic weren't able to make moves today.
Yeah. Got another super chat. This one's from Matt Baldwin. Said, could we have traded picks and KCP for Durant? Now that would have been a blockbuster move. That would have turned some heads. That's for sure. To me, that's not exactly the player that would have been on the Magic's radar. I don't think they were looking for a guy to come and take over this team, short term or long term, right? And that's what happens when you trade for a guy like Kevin Durant. Like, he is number one in not just on the roster but in the town, right? He takes over the whole organization. He takes over the fan base and all that kind of stuff. And I think this front office, rightfully so, still wants to give the keys and keep the keys in the hands of Paolo and Franz. And so I don't think a move like that was ever even on the table. Would it have turned heads? Would it have been exciting? Maybe. Would it have been good for the short and long term for this team? Probably not. But yeah, shout out to everybody. Thank you so much for all those super chats. Really appreciate everybody supporting us through super chats and all those amazing things as well. Let's see. Let's hit a couple more of these messages from the chat. And then, Jonathan, I do want to do, as we always do on the postgame live, I want to go through the scores around the league and the standings and see what kind of damage tonight did for us. Let's see. Matthew says, Miami will kill us in the play-in if we play them. What do you think about Miami really fast? I don't want to spend a lot of time on every other team. The reason why I want to bring up Miami is because they are the team we're chasing right now, one of them. And they are in-state rivals, and they had a pretty significant deal done. Like, are you like me? Do you feel they got better because of the moves that they made today?
I feel like the Miami Heat have improved with the moves that they made. One, they just got rid of a major locker room cancer in Jimmy Butler and a massive distraction and just point of stress and contention on their team. And because they've been constantly suspending him for the last couple of months, getting a guy like Andrew Wiggins, I just think they are going to be a little bit better. Um, do I feel that they're better than the Magic? I don't know. The last time that we played them and we were healthy, we blew the doors off of them. But again, that feels like a season ago, and that feels like a different team ago. In certain respects. But yeah, it's not nothing.
Yeah. Let's see. Where did I missed where that went. I had another thing I really wanted to bring up, but I lost it. Brandon, this is it. Brandon said, if Weltman didn't make a trade because people wanted to fleece us, then I'm straight. Yeah, I mean, if the only deals that were available to Jeff Weltman were terrible deals that ripped us off, of course, like, I'm obviously right. Everyone's right there with you. Part of the struggle of this is we have absolutely no idea what was on the table, right? That's part of the mystery of the trade deadline. It's part of the mystery of being a Magic fan specifically. Not a lot of rumors swirling around, but that's also part of the experience as a fan, right, is trying to guess and better understand what happens behind closed doors when it comes to trade negotiations. I would be very surprised if there was not a deal out there that wasn't fleecing us, right? It just feels like, given our current situation, given the things that we have available to deal, there had to have been some deal that at least was partially acceptable. Like I find it hard to believe that every deal on the table for the Magic was us just getting ripped off. I that feels pretty far fetched to me, but maybe it is. And if that's the case, then Jeff Weltman should be.
It just feels unlikely.
Yeah, it does. And if that's the case, Jeff Weltman should be commended, but it feels very, very unlikely. Kevin says, did you see that Philly signed Chuma on a 10-day? Yes. Congratulations to Chuma Okeke back in the NBA. Heck yeah, says we have to go 8-3 in this stretch to be 2 games above 500, heading to tougher end of season. That's minimum needed to have a chance at 6 seed. I appreciate that breakdown there. That's a really good way to look at it, and probably very accurate. Like I said, this team has to get hot right now, starting Saturday, if they're going to have a chance of crawling out of the play-in. And look, if that doesn't happen, could this team make some noise in the play-in, right? Sure, maybe, especially if they're able to. Yeah, I don't know. Everything feels far-fetched right now because the way this team looks. But let's say they don't get hot during this immediate stretch. Maybe they get hot later in the season and they end up as a play-in team. Anything's possible. But man, it doesn't feel so great right now. Let's see. Matty Rogers, our dear friend, says the stacked draft and we have 2 firsts, 1 a potential lottery. Didn't think we'd be pulling up Tankathon, but here we are. Yeah, we're not too far out of the lottery at this point. Last I saw, we were 1 position out of the lottery. I don't know what it is today, but hard to believe that we're in this position after we were talking about home court advantage all the offseason and then most of this season. A couple more thoughts from the chat.
Well, the best part of that is your record could be playing. Your record could be lottery, but if you win the play and end up in the playoffs, then you're not. So
correct, yeah. Or if you're in that 9-10 play-in game and you lose, then you are in the lottery, which is pretty wild. Yeah. Let's see. Last couple thoughts here from the chat, and then, like I said, let's do that first. Let's check out the scores around the league, and then the standings, and then we'll come back to.
There is one last thing that I wanted to mention, Kevin, just about heading into this summer. Well, I saw a lot of people like immediately shift their attention to the summer, which I mean is kind of what you have to do, but are talking about like, okay, we'll make a move for Durant, or we'll make a move for LaMelo, or we'll make a move for Trae Young again. Like, it's just so hard to go with 3 max guys at this point, and I would have a really hard time going to Magic fans or whoever and saying all we need to do to fix this is spend $250 million bringing someone in via trade, give up Jalen Suggs, all these other pieces that we have to make the salaries match, and then incredibly inhibit our ability to improve the team beyond that point. Like, short of this team going to like the Eastern Conference Finals and being a game or 2 away from the NBA Finals, I just don't see that being realistic. So if that is your hope, I would not put all of your eggs in that type of basket. The trade is still most likely going to be acquiring like an Anthony Simons. I think would be like a home run acquisition for this team at this point. I think if we're looking for a home run, it's kind of that level of player, a guy who is really, really good, dynamic, but is like just kind of on the outside of the all-star conversation. That's the kind of move that I think you're hoping to make this offseason.
Yeah, I feel like it's a move you have to make at this point, right? Like, if we go into next season with basically the same roster, that's when things are going to get ugly for this fan base. That will be hard to believe if that happens. All right, let's see. We got just a few games tonight. Timberwolves beat the Rockets. That's an interesting one. Mavs beat the Celtics. Mavericks still without Anthony Davis, and they beat almost healthy Celtics. I think the only player that didn't play of like the key Celtics players is Drew Holiday, still out with a shoulder injury. Looks like the Blazers just beat the Kings again. Look at that. The Blazers, I think they've won 9 of 10 now or something crazy like that.
Actually good.
They're on fire. And we'll look at the standings in a second. They're inching closer to postseason basketball. Still got a little bit of a ways to go, but credit to the Blazers for catching fire. Pacers Clippers are tied with 11 minutes to go in the 4th, and then Warriors Lakers. Lakers are up 9. with 5 minutes to go. Still no Luka Doncic in that. It looks like he's not going to play Saturday as well, which is interesting. Pushing that debut back to probably early next week. And then, of course, your Orlando Magic lose by 22 in Denver. Going over to the standings here, I'm going to refresh this. I don't think that Portland game is going to be live because that literally just happened as we were talking about it. But as far as the Magic go, as we said, they are now down a full game to the Detroit Pistons, who are in the 7th seed, down 2 games to the Miami Heat, 4 games back of the Bucks, and 5 games back of the Pacers. Jonathan, I said on Monday's postgame live, I felt that the 4 seed is officially out of reach. Are you at that point now? 5 games back with, 30 games to go, something like that? What is this? Tonight was game number 53. So, yeah, you're 29 games left in the season. Do you feel that the 4 seed, 5 games back, 5 teams to pass, is totally out of reach now?
I'm going to give you the Doctor Strange one. The one possibility is Jalen Suggs comes back and all of a sudden this team looks like the team from 2 months ago.
Mm,
That's the only realistic possibility in my mind for us
yeah,
to go on a run like that. I don't mean to be like incredibly pessimistic. Just seeing what we've seen from this team and the lack of shooting that we've seen for now, 53 games. And I had somebody today say that the shooting struggles are unsustainable. I said that for 2.5 months at the beginning of the season. We're 53 games in now. If you do something for 53 games, that is sustainable. That
right.
is the definition of sustaining something.
Yep. And it is who you are, right? Like you can be in denial of those things, but yeah, if you do something for 5-10 games, it's a bad stretch. If you, like you said, do it for 53 games, and plus, honestly, it's more than 53 games. This was last season. The Magic were able to win in spite of those struggles, but this is who they are, right? Okay. So
And,
yeah,
and I had people. I hate to keep doing this. I had people, saying, "Well, look at what we did last year with this team. Like, yeah, you were still the 22nd offense last year, fully healthy. Like people, oh, we just need to get healthy. Fully healthy, we're probably still a bottom half of the league in offensive efficiency.
yeah, I think that might be generous. Might be more like bottom third still, which is pretty wild.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think the 4 seed is completely out of the question at this point. I don't see any way. If you were 5 games back and only had a couple teams you had to pass, maybe. But 5 games back with 5 teams to pass, it's just it doesn't feel real. To me, the goal at this point is the 6 seed. That's the move. The target has moved.
Play-in.
Stay out of the play-in. Get that 6 seed. Play the Knicks in the first
And
round.
get a first round matchup with the Knicks
Yeah.
or the Celtics. They're a game and a half back of the Celtics.
That's true.
Celtics just got floored today. I mean, when you're a game and a half back, we're a Jason Tatum sprained ankle, the second week of March away from that being a 3-6 Magic Celtics matchup in the first round.
How's that for a
And that,
reward?
in my opinion, is a nightmare.
Yeah. So if that happens, which again, I feel like it's best case scenario, the Magic end up 6. I mean, again, like you said, is there a world that they can climb 4 spots and get the 5 seed? Sure. I mean, honestly, like we said, Milwaukee, I personally don't think they got better with that Kuzma deal. Like, I don't like the fit Kuzma potentially has at Milwaukee. I could totally be wrong. I've been wrong many times about basketball. I think there's a chance that they don't get better and maybe even get worse. Who knows? I don't know. So is there a way that the Magic can move up to the 4 seed and end up playing, let's say it's the Pacers or the Heat or the Bucks in the first round? I think it's possible. It just feels super unlikely. And I think the goal at this point is that 6 seed. And then your reward, like you said, you either play the Knicks or the Celtics in the first round, which good luck with that. That'll be interesting. I did mention the Blazers earlier. They are still 3.5 games back of the 10, which actually, once they add that win in, they're going to be 3 games back of the 10 seed. So still got a ways to go. But hey, credit to Portland. They're on fire. And it makes me feel a little bit better about the 2 losses that we had recently. So anyway, all right, last couple thoughts here from the chat before we call it a night. It's been a nice lengthy show tonight as we get to break down the drama or lack thereof of the trade deadline today. Let's see. Kevin says, I like the big lineup from the last game, KCP, Franz, Paolo, J.I., and Goga. I think that lineup has its place in stretches. Could you do that lineup for long sustained periods of game? Probably not. But I definitely think it's another bag of tricks that is available to Jamal Mosley. Let's see what else we got here. C. Thomas says Suggs is untouchable right now. It feels like it because, I mean, without him, this team is really struggling. And like you said, we'll see when he gets back if he really is the difference maker in what we've seen. But yeah, Axis says, really need Mo back on the bench yelling at people. There's a void in the locker room. I think, Jonathan, this is a great point. I think there's a very good chance that Mo could be back on the bench during this homestand. Maybe not every game. Obviously, I'm sure he's still wearing some sort of, device on his knee, whether it's a cast or whatever. I don't know if he's got one of those metal braces at this point. Who knows? But I would not be surprised if he is back on the bench for home games here soon, just like Axis is talking about here, just as another moral support. Obviously, I don't think he's going to travel. I don't think any of those things. But I think that would be a nice thing to see Mo back on the bench here, hopefully very soon. Let's see. Last couple of thoughts here. Axis, another one says, we were 29-24 by this time last year. Yikes. Yeah. So we're almost the opposite of that at this point. 25-28. MJ Ridiculous says, hypothetically, if Jeff Weltman doesn't do a significant move, nothing crazy, I'm talking a Kobe White level player, and he just runs it back, will people still defend him? That's what I was saying earlier. If that happens this offseason and we run it back a third time, I think that is when people will really start to lose their patience. At least I will, right? If we go through the offseason and do not make any kind of adjustments, that is when my attitude will turn, right? I think this offseason has to be it.
My patience has already run out, but at this point, we don't have any other choice but to wait.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to me, like I'm not going into the offseason with any level of patience. Like, I'm going into the offseason of like moves need to be made, right? Like, I think a lot of people's patience has run out in that regard, but continuing to yell and be upset, like for the next, I mean, we have 5 months until we're at any type of juncture where we can really make moves. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. I mean, the day after the finals, we should get news that Paolo Banchero has agreed to his, rookie max extension, because you can, negotiate with your own players the day after the deadline or the day after the finals ends. But like when the transaction window opens, like, okay, it's time to make a move.
Yeah. Last couple ones here. Nick Monk says, in all honesty, Kevin and Jonathan, Kobe White would have been a pretty nice move for us. It's a more consistent version of Cole Anthony. 100% agree. I think that's why a lot of people wanted him, because that's exactly right. A more consistent version of Cole Anthony. Has Cole been good before tonight, the last couple games? Yes, but that's part of the problem with Cole Anthony. He's not super consistent. Jonas Whale says, De'Aaron Fox is the dude we needed. No surprise he wanted to play with Wemby, though. Thank you for mentioning that second sentence. I cannot tell you how many people have come to us saying we should have made a deal for De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox made it clear he wanted to go to San Antonio. It is said he did not want to get traded at all, but when the Kings came to him and said, hey, we're going to trade you, he said, fine, send me to San Antonio. I don't want to go anywhere else. And so thank you for adding that, because, yeah, again, the number of people that said, why didn't we get De'Aaron Fox? Because he didn't want to come here. And you don't want to trade for a guy that's not going to re-sign with you, right? C. Thomas says, Kevin, you hit the nail on the head. The dead weight is the source of frustration, but overall, we need to be positive and support our guys. I do want to finish with this thought. I think this is important, C. Thomas, because I still think this is a team that is capable of making noise and having a good run. I would hate if our frustration from the trade deadline and from this losing stretch would boil over into our support or lack thereof for this team, especially during this homestand. Like I said, this is the make or break time for this season, and I think it is imperative that Magic fans really support this team during this home stretch here, right? If we want to see this team turn it around, if we want to see this team win games like they did at the beginning of the season and in last season, this is the stretch to do it. I would hate that any frustration with Jeff Weltman or anybody would boil over into a lack of support for the players that we have for the rest of the season.
Totally agree.
All right, let's see. One more here. Vibrant Star says, just tank for flag at this point. No, thank you. We're not quite that desperate, and we're not even that close to being competitive for the bottom section of the lottery.
Is it even mathematically possible?
That's a good question. It might not be. Let's see. The Wizards have 9 wins, so they need, what do we say? There's 29 games left in the season, so it's still mathematically possible, but barely. OMB Fanatic says, what is the actual status on Suggs? That's the question. That's a question we all have. We thought he'd be back Monday. He wasn't. It keeps getting pushed back. I hope it's Saturday as we start this home stretch, but we will see. Jonathan, anything else for us before we wrap this night up?
No, yeah. Obviously, I'm very frustrated. I think anybody can sense that. Um, I still believe, that Jeff Weltman and his team have done a good job up to this point. Overwhelmingly, for the most part, they have not been perfect. Um, but to me, like this is it's this is truly this offseason is put up or shut up. Like you have to make the moves at this point. I just don't see how you can not make the moves, and I do have a level of anxiety now going into the off season. Um, like it just in terms of like, hey, like if the rest of it, if we win a first round playoff series, I'll be totally fine because you go into the off season and we know what the question marks on this team are. But like let's say things just go really badly over the course of, the next, what is it, 29 games that we have, and things don't go well at all in the postseason. I'm gonna be apprehensive going into the off season, but um, to your point, Kevin, don't let this affect the way that you support this team or the organization or the players themselves. Um, Today's frustrating, but like genuinely could be so much worse. Like we could have a Nico Harrison,
Yeah.
we could have a Rob Hennigan. We don't have that here, and I don't think people should be thinking that. So
Yeah. And
just
again,
hope this works out the way that they envisioned it by not making moves today.
right. And I do like to remind myself, like, think about where we were just 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago. Like the progress is there. We just still have a ways to go. We know what the potential long term of the core of this team is, and that's all we want. That's all Magic fans want. We want to see that core, that potential realized, and sometimes we want to see it sooner rather than later. And so I think that's part of the frustration. But I think the possibility is there again for a great run this season, and then of course in the long run. So, all right, folks, I think that's going to do it for us. What a day. What an interesting day. Magic back in action Saturday against the San Antonio Spurs. Again, back at home, starting the stretch of 10 home games in the next 11. It's going to be really important. If you're going to be there, be loud, be proud, support this team. Now's the time to make a move. We can put all this behind us with some winning basketball. Fingers crossed we'll do that. Thanks, Jonathan, for joining us. And of course, as always, let's go Magic.